Sometimes they'll come up and ask, sometimes they may have a question to ask me, but understand they've got a really great group of guys down at the school.
Sure.
So, and all those guys down there are the go-to guys, But I find out most of the times when a question is asked of me, it's more of a babyface nature.
Of course.
Yeah, I was a babyface throughout my whole career. One of the few guys that never, jump fence. So the Roberts and Savage, Don Morocco, as far back Sergeant Slaughter, Rick Rude, Ric Flair, the best in the business. So, but now when I look back, I am so glad that Pat talked me out of it. A box seat area where they had a lot of us legends and guys that obviously are accustomed to the style that we worked.
Of course.
And they had our attention. Okay? They had our attention. And then, of course, Shane looking up and sitting there at the bottom on the floor looking at the top of the cage and then but taking his time. Thinking about it. You could see the wheels turning in his head as, am I going to climb this thing and get up there at the top? And then when he got up there and stood and looked down, and I think he painted an excellent picture of, holy crap, what have I done?
Right. Seizing the moment.
Yes, what have I done now? I mean, I'm up here now. The fans are going to crap all over me if I decide not to do this and start climbing down. I put myself in a predicament.
Right.
To talk. Look at Bray Wyatt.
Right.
His character now. I think this is probably the third character that he has tried. He was Husky Harris once, and then he was somebody else prior to that.
Right.
As hard as he was trying, it just didn't seem natural. Didn't click. But then you see this guy now. Okay. I don't know if this happens, but I'm just going to go on record and saying I would think this would happen, and that is, the writing team comes up with suggestions, and Bray is taking it all in, and knowing himself.
Sure.
And he's really gotten successful with this guy, this character. Yes. Maybe saying no to a suggestion, but I would think, even with going back to young talent, if you had a negative point about it, make sure that you back it up with something that may either make what their suggestion better, or a suggestion that you have that has nothing to do with what they're wanting you to do, but if it's better. That's the way I can see it. Rick was up there talking to Charlotte, and the fans started booing her. What a heel, right? Diva.
Right.
Come on. And she just threw her hands up like, oh well, to everybody.
Right.
I mean, that great. Instead of going, why are they booing me? Oh my God, this and that. But she clicked right into character and went, all right, it is what it is, everybody.
As a father, like Ric Flair as a father, what was your first reaction when your son approached you and told you he wanted to be a professional wrestler? Were you proud or a little apprehensive? Sure.
But The Rock just had that charismatic eye for the camera. And that's what everybody fell in love with.
Yep.
And that's where you could relate. That's more so today's wrestler, is if you're camera friendly, and you have the gift to be able to relate verbally.
Right.
Everything else you do in the ring, it just, if you can have enough just to get by, but this one-on-one camera stuff, that's what's going to make you.
Sure. So just
a lot of people talk about Ricky Steamboat, and they tell that, boy, what a salesman you were in the business, in the ring. I learned early on, it's to be a babyface and to sell correctly. It does a couple of things. It sets up the heat that the heel's getting.
Right.
Okay? Which then segues into the babyface having his moment of a comeback. If there's no heat, if people don't say, if he can't build the heat and people are feeling for you, it doesn't warrant a comeback.
Right.
A lot of babyfaces have come to me and, at the end of the match says, how come during my comeback everybody was just sitting on their you know, no reaction. I said, well, you didn't front. I walked into the office in Tampa, and Eddie Graham sat there, and he had my picture that was sent down from Vern Gagne,
Right.
AWA, and it said Dick Blood. Now Blood's my last.
Yeah.
I got another story real quick. Old school promoters, Eddie Graham, Vern Gagne, Vince Senior,
Right.
Watts, okay, old school promoters, they kept contact with each other on talent, especially main event talent, and pretty much on a handshake and a phone agreement, they kept their television within their territory.
Was Fritz von Erich in that circle?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't get all the names. I know at one time there was like 18 or 20 territories in the country. There's
Wow.
2 or 3 out in California, Florida. Your tag team partner, main event guy that was getting over and got over. I'm just getting a rub, we call.
Right, of course.
I'm just getting a rub. He said, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. He said, it was Graham and Steamboat, Eddie and Sam. I'm going to team you up with my son. It'll be Graham and Steamboat again, but it's going to be Mike and Ricky, like second generation. Going to have you go up against the Hollywood Blondes with Humperdinck as their manager and see what you 2 boys can do. Week or something.
Right.
I said, I'm not going to do it. He got pissed off at me and he said, well, find your own territory to go to. I went back to Oldie. He said, what did Vern say? And I said, well, I started off by telling him this is where he wanted me to go. I had it checked out. They're starving up there. And for me to drive 3,000 miles, so Ole says, let me see what I can do. I don't know how long it took. It seemed like it was a short time, like less than a week. He says, you're going to the Carolinas, kid. It's just right up the road, 250 miles from Atlanta.
Right.
Instead of 3,000. So, you know, I went there and like I said, I went there in March of '77. That summer, I'm doing my first angle with Ric Flair, and all of a sudden, him and I are off and running for years. Got him. So I look at it and I say, it reads out loud, if Steamboat and Youngblood do not win the championship, their team as a tag team is to be dissolved and never, ever reunited as partners. And I said, does this mean that if we don't beat these guys in this cage, that Jay and I are finished? And he said, that's what it says. And of course, Dusty was the booker for Crockett. It's very hard, and everybody in our business understands that when you have what we call the man with the pencil, who's the booker, the matchmaker, but also actively working.
And plus, as the babyface.
And being a babyface. So when he came in, and you know, when he came in and I saw the writing on the wall because Tully Blanchard was the TV champion. He made Tully the TV champion. And even though it was a main event match, and all timing being what it is, very shortly after that, a call from George Scott and said, you know, Ricky, I'm up here and working for Vince, and he's got big ideas and aspirations, you know, that we're going to go coast to coast.
Before we get into WWF,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is next, I just want you to quickly tell the David Crockett merchandise story.
Oh, well, that was with Jimmy.
Okay.
David's you should look and he should look leading up to that moment.
Right.
You know, if the heel is pretty dominant, okay, throughout the match, and then he goes over by cheating, people are thinking he was so dominant, why do you have to cheat?
Right.
But a lot of guys don't even think it that way. So you just boom, boom, and all of a sudden I'm laying there and I'm selling. You know, I felt the shot to my head. You know, all of a sudden on the cement you could see the blood.
No.
And Barry goes from, boom, take that, Steamboat, take that. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Ricky. I'm sorry, Ricky. I'm sorry.
That must have been some moment.
Yeah, you know, and bless him. Fortunately, at the hospital was right across the street from the building.
Oh,
So
dude.
I just, yeah, walked with a white towel on my head by myself, walked over there.
Oh my God! What did they think
Walked
when you walked
in, and they're like, "Man, the crap's real. You just put your head wide open." Sitting there would look up and say, "Oh, hey, Ricky, how you doing? Here's your check." Boom. I'm not there 30 seconds, but there are guys that were there all morning long. And I was never going to be. I always made a promise to myself but I felt good enough about myself to do this, that I'm not going to be there to hold my main event spot because I'm bringing coffee and donuts to the main guys, the booker and the owner every morning.
Right.
I'm going to rely on my ability to stay in the main event position. I don't have to brown nose anybody. It's going to be my ability, my showmanship in the ring that's going to keep me there.
Right.
And I was pretty headfast and strong about that through my whole career. The guys that wrestled back in the 50s and 60s,
Oh my God, what a match you two put on, you son of a bitch. I never saw anything like that in my life before. My God, how many false finishes did you have in that match? My God.